What is up, T.O.Gs? So a long time ago I made a video regarding short riders, and it was kind of a really generic video. I talked very broadly about what it's like to be a short rider, advantages, disadvantages, but I thought I would make a more comprehensive video about riding as a short person, and some of the things we can't do, and just to talk about it a little bit more in depth. Now that I have a little bit more experience riding under my belt, now that I have a little more experience on different bikes under my belt, and now that I have more experience as a motovlogger. So, this is not going to read me. Thank you, there's a car coming. So let's jump right into it. So I wanted to talk to all of you tiptoeing T.O.Gs out there. All of you who are vertically challenged, and for me, I'm 5'6", I have about a 30-inch inseam. And what I've come to learn in general as a shorter rider is that there's not a lot that we cannot do. And that's pretty awesome. Now, let me talk to you a little bit specifically what I'm talking about when I say that. Now, surely there's things that we can't do as riders. There are certain bikes definitely made that we are unable to safely maneuver, safely ride. Maybe the reach is too far for our legs, or that maybe the seat height is too high for us to safely mount and dismount the bike. So recently I had someone ask, you know, they were a shorter person and they wanted to ride this same bike, this KTM Super Duke R, the 1290, because they know that they're about the same height as me, but they also know that the seat height on this bike is almost 33 inches, which is 3 inches higher than my inseam. So let's talk in general first about the things that we can't do and when it's not worth it to even try. Now, if you can't safely reach the front controls with your feet, there are a few bikes that I've tried to ride, namely the Breakout before the Breakout turned into a Softail version. I'm talking about Harley Davidson. With the front controls, they're just too far forward. I can't reach them safely, and it's just not worth it for me to try. You know, it's an awesome looking bike. It's a fun bike to ride, from what I could tell on the Softail version. But it just wasn't worth it to me to try to ride the old Breakout. So I didn't try, and I don't think it's worth it to anyone who's a shorter rider to try to ride a bike that's just not, that they're not able to safely maneuver. What else does this mean? This means, like I said, this means with bikes with higher ride heights than you're comfortable tiptoeing around on. This means bikes maybe that are too heavy for you, and that maybe has less to do with how tall you are than how strong you are. And in that case, you know, there might be a bike that someone who's taller doesn't even feel comfortable riding. So those are some of the things that you want to watch out for as a shorter rider. Are bikes that are too tall, that reach for you for the front controls with your feet are too far, and then bikes that are too heavy. Those are bikes that I would just completely try to avoid if you're a shorter rider. Now, where there's a will, there's a way. I know a lot of those bikes that Harley makes with the front controls can be modded to have mid controls. So if you really, really want to ride one of those bikes that you feel like stock is not accessible to you, you know, find a way and make it happen if that's what you really want to do. Of course, you're going to have a little bit of scratch to do that, because it costs money to make those mods, and those aren't always super simple to do. Okay, so we've talked about the things that we can't do. Let's talk about the things that we can do. I think as a shorter rider, at least for me, and all the different bikes and all the different styles that I've ridden, some of my favorite and most comfortable bikes to ride as a shorter rider are cruisers with mid controls. Definitely sportier bikes. I'm not a guy who likes to reach far out with my hands for a sport bike. As a shorter rider too, you've got to lean that farther forward because your arms are shorter. But the nice thing about a shorter rider on a sport bike is that tuck with your legs isn't going to be as intense as it would be for a tall rider who's really got to tuck those knees up in. So sport bikes are an excellent choice for a shorter rider. Sport nakeds, And then adventure bikes, surprisingly, if you can find an adventure bike or a dirt bike that you feel comfortable mounting and dismounting, those bikes are a ton of fun. And you would be surprised that even though the seat height is so high, if you can find a way to mount that bike and get it going, you should be okay. Now again, this all has to do with your comfortability level, with your skill level, where you are as a rider. But I would say if you're a shorter rider and you start on a certain kind of bike and you feel like you're comfortable there, but you want to ride a different kind of bike, like I said before, if there's a will, there's a way. So try it out for sure. I mean, obviously it doesn't hurt to just try and mount a bike. You know, if you've got to have somebody there to spot you, to make sure you're not going to tip over one way or the other, then by all means have somebody there to help you out. But don't let anyone tell you that you cannot ride a bike. I think I've told this story before, but when I first tried to ride the Dyna Fat Bob, I sat on one at a dealer, and then I put my feet on the controls, and the salesperson said, you know, you're probably not going to fit on this bike. This probably isn't a good fit for you. And that's the bike that I ended up buying. So, you know, people are going to tell you one thing. Maybe they're trying to tell you, maybe out of their own good conscience, maybe they don't think that a certain bike is a good fit for you. But like I said, if there's something that you want to do, give it a whirl. See what you can do with what God gave you. Okay, so now we've talked about the things that we can't do and the things that we can do. Oh, it does look like it's going to rain a little bit today, so we want to make sure that we get in before that reaches us. So got to keep that in mind as we ride around. So guys, let's talk about specifics a little bit more. I had someone specifically ask me how it is as a shorter rider to ride the Super Duke, because they were thinking about this bike in particular, but it felt like it was too much of a reach for their legs. They're too high up on their tiptoes. So let's talk about how I make this bike work for me. First of all, it's a really well-balanced bike. It's not top-heavy. I definitely, when I was looking at naked sports and sport bikes to ride, I tried a few different ones. One of the ones that I didn't like, because I did feel it had a less well-balanced feel to it and felt a little top-heavy, was the Aprilia Shiver. You know, that bike it's a really good price point on that bike, but I just couldn't make it work because I didn't feel super comfortable on that bike. Now, you might feel differently. You might have one and be like, dude, it's super easy to ride and it's comfortable and it is well-balanced. But for me, I just didn't feel comfortable on it. And like I said, when you're looking at certain bikes or certain styles that you want to ride, you yourself have to be comfortable in that situation. So the Shiver was out for me, but the KTM I thought was great. The balance was good. I didn't have a problem mounting the bike or dismounting the bike, but what was awkward at first for me, because of going from a cruiser to this bike, was mounting the bike. When I threw my leg over, if I didn't get my leg all the way over the top and kind of like started sitting on the bike before I was all the way over the top of it, it felt like it was going to tilt over to the right side, and that was something I had to deal with probably the first month or so of mounting the bike. So if you're considering this bike, know that that's something that you'll have to contend with. The bike sits very upright on its kickstand, so that you just have to consider, because it's sitting so upright and not really leaning at an angle to make the bike even a little bit shorter for you to mount. You just have to consider that when getting on top of it. Okay, so getting off the bike for me is not a problem at all, because you put the kickstand down, you know, you slide over to the left, put your foot down, and then you dismount the bike like you normally would. I have never had any problems. I think maybe if you were somebody who's maybe a little less flexible, if you're older, or just in general a less flexible person, it's something maybe you've got to be careful with. But I've never felt insecure about getting off of this bike. Now, when you're just riding around in general on this motorcycle and you have to come to a stop at a stoplight, stop sign, when you're getting ready to get off the bike, like I said, this bike feels so well balanced, and you know, it comes in at about 435 pounds with a full tank of gas, and I've never felt uncomfortable once I've dismounted the bike, moving it and walking the bike. And that's something that you're going to have to get comfortable with doing. If you are a shorter person like me and you get a bike that has a higher seat height, when you stop like this and you got to put your feet down, it's not like a bike where you can flat foot, where you can just start maneuvering the bike while you're sitting on it, while you're straddling the bike. You're going to have to get comfortable with dismounting the bike, getting off, and then moving it around while you walk the bike somewhere. If that's something you're out of practice doing, I just made a video on how to do that, so make sure you check that video. I'll put a link up here so you can go straight to that video if you need. But really, guys, that's all there is to it. You know, being short, I've always felt like being short has a lot less disadvantages to being tall. You know, and this is just maybe me being a positive person and me seeing the brighter side of things. But as a shorter person, you know, are there things sometimes that are out of our reach? Or do we have to move this car, the driver's seat forward a lot when a tall person's been driving a car before us? Yeah, there are certain things about being a short person that we have to deal with. But I have never had a problem with being cramped in a back seat. I've never had a problem being cramped in the driver's seat of a car. You know, there are things called step ladders that I don't have a problem getting to higher places if I need to. For me, I've had taller friends who've said, I can't ride that bike that you ride because I just look like a giant person on a tiny little bike. And, you know, like I said, there are bikes that we can't ride, but there are a lot more bikes that we can ride than we cannot. So, anyway, I always like to look on the brighter side of things. I hope that you can do that too. Being a short person has its advantages and disadvantages, but in the world of motorcycles, you shouldn't let being short be that factor that makes you feel like there are things that you can't do. Well, guys, that's all I've got for you today. If you like this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up down there, which is the like button. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. Guys, if you're out there riding, please be safe. And if you're not riding, get ready. I'm that one guy, and I am out.